What is up, guys? Today I'm out here on Canyon Lake right now. This entire morning I've been getting my ass kicked. I have been this entire year, but you know, I said it's springtime. Some people might be wondering what I do have on deck, so I'm gonna kind of go through my top 5 springtime big swim baits. So we're gonna kind of go through it all. I'm gonna show you guys the baits, I'm gonna show you guys the rods, the reels, and what line I like to throw them on. So if you guys are kind of confused on what you want to throw this time of year, hopefully this video kind of gives you an idea of maybe what to throw. So let's get right into the video. So when it comes to springtime, normally here, that means these fish are kind of moving up. You know, you got the big females, they're spawning, or they're about to spawn, or they just got done spawning. And normally around March, this time of year, you still have trout in the water. It's still kind of cool enough for those trout to be around. So one of the number one, if not the number one swim bait I've ever thrown in spring is definitely gonna be the Hinkle trout. Now this bait has caught me a lot of big fish during springtime. It's just a great big profile for these fish to feed up on, to see, especially since in springtime the water does get a lot more clear. So like this bait, it gives off such a big presence. So those big girls that just got done spawning, or if they do have like a territory that they're about to spawn in, this big bait will definitely get their attention rather than throwing like something small. And so those fish during springtime, those big females, they're up there, they're guarding their territory, their nest. So if you throw this in the general area, a lot of those fish do get more aggressive and defensive of the territory, and they're more inclined to hit something of this size. So I've gotten a lot of big fish, of course, on this bait, you know, all the way up to 9 pounds. And it's just such a great springtime bait. That's the bait. What I'm throwing it on, I've kind of gone back and forth between it throughout the years on either it's an extra heavy or an extra heavy, but lately the only thing I've been throwing it on is this thing right here. This is my Moam's. It's an extra heavy rod. It's probably rated for about 8 or 9 ounces. With this bait being around 9 ounces itself, it does kind of load the rod a little on the heavier side, but that's how I like it. Just because this rod's a little more stiff, so I like to overload the rod so it feels like it's lighter. You feel what I'm saying? So when I throw this bait, I can work it. It's got just a nice soft tip for the bait overall, but it still has the backbone to absolutely yuck it a mile. So that's the rod. I absolutely love this specific rod for the Hinkle. Like I said, I've gone through some of the extra heavies, but it's a little bit too stiff for how I like to work my Hinkle. So that's that. And now with the reels, I've gone through you know, the Calcutta Conquest, but overall I love the Revo Big Shooter. This is what I've got on here. It's a faster gear ratio reel, and the way that I work this Hinkle, it's really quick. It's almost like a slide swimmer. It's real quick, so I've got to move a lot of water and pick up a lot of line. And with this reel, I could do that like very easily. And I think it's like a 7:3 to 1 gear ratio reel, so I could just move this bait really quickly. And I think when you can get a bait of this caliber to swim really fast and erratic, that just triggers something in those fish's mind, like I've got to kill that thing. So that's what I've been liking so far. The line, I've been throwing 20-pound co-poly. It's Isoline XXX for probably the past like 2 years or so, and I absolutely love it. I haven't really snapped off any baits with it. I think it's super strong, and yes, it's 20 pounds, so it is on the lighter side, but I think I can make this specific bait dance a lot better with that lighter line. Just because if I'm throwing it on like 30-pound, the line will not make the bait swim as well as it would on some of the lighter stuff. So I go with 20 pounds, the lighter stuff that I would throw it on, and it works just fine. I haven't snapped off the Hinkle yet, you know, knock on wood, but 20-pound works just fine for this bait. This is one of my favorite setups this time of year. When they're moving up shallow and you have a shot at like a giant fish, you want to go with a giant presentation like this one. So this time of year, my whole mentality is to work pretty fast and work the shallow water and cover a lot of water. So with these glide baits, I can do that pretty quickly. So the next bait, kind of a staple anywhere and any time of the year, and of course that's the Depths 250. This is the slide swimmer in the flash carp color, and just the overall profile of this bait is, I think, incredible. 10 inches long, It's not too wide, it's not too thin. It's just a perfect profile bait. And the Depth 250, everybody knows the Depth 250. It's one of the, if not the greatest glide bait in the world right now. Now, the reason why I'd probably pick this over like the Hinkle is if I'm feeling like the trout aren't too active in the area, or if those fish aren't really keying in on like the super big stuff, then I'm gonna downsize to like this guy. And the rod that I've been throwing that on as of recently has been this one right here. This is my Lowdown Custom. It's the production series. It's the extra heavy. It's an 8'6". It's rated 3 to 8 ounces. The slide swimmer, it's about 6 ounces depending on how you weight it. So this rod fits this 250 absolutely perfectly. And with this production rod, not like the other extra heavy that I just showed you guys, this one has a lot softer of a tip. Like, it's very, very soft. So with this one, it loads up the slide swimmer like perfectly, so you can just launch this thing out there. And since it's that 6 ounce range, it loads this rod just perfectly. And with that lighter tip, I can work it in where it bounces and glides. And that lighter tip, for me, I think works the glide baits a lot better than something that's very, very stiff. So I like a little bit softer tip rod, and that's why I've got this one right here. And then with the reel that I've got on here, it's a Daiwa, it's a Z200. It's the fast gear ratio reel. It's the 7.2 to 1 gear ratio, so it's a lot quicker. And with this one, since I'm working the slide swimmer as fast as I am, that glide, this is the reel that's going to pick up the line for me. It's going to move water really quickly. It is a smaller profile reel, so it's pretty light. This entire setup is the lightest setup that I carry right now. So it makes fishing the slide swimmer a breeze. It's probably the best setup that I've ever thrown with the slide swimmer on. So it's just a match made in heaven. And then the line on here, I've got 20-pound Sunline FC Sniper. Kind of just giving it a try as of recently, but I absolutely love this FC lately. Makes that bait dance. There's no stretch in the line, so I have immediate contact with that bait. So it's just no stretch whatsoever when I do a glide bait. And when it bits super far on like a cast, there won't be any of that stretch, and I can feel the bait even on like a super long cast. Even if I sink it out, I can feel what that bait is doing with that fluorocarbon. So that 20-pound fluorocarbon, it's pretty light. I'm not gonna lie. It's a lot in diameter. It's a lot smaller than the copoly. So at first I was kind of iffy on it, but once you get confidence in it, once you get used to it, it's an amazing line. So that's the setup right now that I've got for the slide swimmer. Next up is going to be the last glide bait that I have always on deck with me, and that is the High Power Herring 9-inch shad glide. This bait is one of my favorite swim baits of all time, just on so many different aspects. The way that it swims, the realism of the bait, and just the way that this bait gets freaking bit. The overall detail of this bait is absolutely insane, from the wrap to even the back fin parts in the water to the big eyes on it. It's just such an ultra realistic swim bait, and in that clear water that springtime is normally known for, this bait really shines. The only time that I really throw it is when I know that those fish are feeding on the shad. Like when I'm literally seeing either like dead shad around, or if I see bait balls, you know, up against walls or whatever, this is the bait that I'm gonna easily pick up. I won't pick up the Hinkle, of course, because they're not keying in on the super big stuff, right? And the slide swimmer, I can pick up the slide swimmer, but I want to downsize to something a little bit smaller and something that matches the hatch. Because when they're chasing the shad around, you know, even conventional guys, you have to make their bait just that extra special to where those fish want to choose their bait over all of the millions of other shad around. And this thing obviously is going to stand out immediately when it's flashing down there. The size of it also is a dead giveaway. And so this is one of the baits that when springtime and I notice that they're feeding a lot on the shad, I'm picking this bait up and I'm throwing it around. Now, just like the slide swimmer, I'm throwing it on the same exact setup. With this specific bait, it's really light. It's probably only like 4 ounces. And the way that this bait is made to be fished, it's made to really, really cut and dance through the water and look super erratic. I think this bait swims the absolute best on the fluorocarbon. And this is one of the few baits where like using lighter line is really gonna help you. Just because of the way that the bait is tuned and built, it is made to be fished on a lot lighter line than some of these other baits. So the heaviest I'd ever go on the HBH is 20 pound, like of all time. And obviously the thinner the line, the more this bait's gonna dance and look more realistic in the water. All right, next up is gonna be into my soft baits. Soft baits, it kind of honestly varies, but it's mostly a trout profile swim bait that's anywhere from 8 inches up to 10 inches long, a magnum to a 10-inch HUD to an 8-inch HUD to, you know, what I'm throwing today, which is the this is the Rago. It's the line through, where it's got a hole on the top, you feed the line through, it comes out, and you fish it just like that. So like today, I was fishing this over points and on rock piles, and just letting it sink out. As soon as it hits the bottom, bring the rod tip up so it kind of comes up over it and stays right above it. It's gonna be thrown the same reason why I throw the Hinkle. It's if I know that there's trout in the area and if I know that there's big fish in a zone. But sometimes what'll happen is those females will come up, they'll already bed, and then they'll immediately dip off and they'll hang out way out here, you know, instead of being like up here. So when they're out here and they're not up shallow, obviously the glide bait being thrown up here is not gonna get them to come out. So that's when you go with the soft bait and you throw it down right in front of their faces. So the rod that I've been using for my soft baits is this guy right here. As of recently, this is a Lowdown Custom. This is an older production model. It's an extra heavy, and I've had one of these in the past before that I threw all my soft baits on. It throws it perfectly. It's an 8-foot extra heavy rod. It's a little bit on the stiffer side than the newer models, which I kind of prefer with that soft bait. And it's an incredible rod, honestly. I love the sensitivity of it, I love the backbone, and I love the tip. So I can feel when I'm in those rocks, and I know when I'm getting bit with this setup here. Now the reel on here is what really like takes the cake. This is the Shimano Calcutta Conquest. It's the 400 size reel. It's one of the best swim bait reels on the market. A lot of swim bait dudes have this reel. It's one of the most popular ones out there. This is the 2015 model. It's like 5.3 to 1, so it's a lot slower. Now the line that I've got on here is 20 pound. It's Sunline FC Sniper. It's the same fluorocarbon that I use for those other lighter glide baits. And the 20 pound fluorocarbon, obviously it's a staple when it comes to throwing soft baits, especially in clear water like we have here, or in California, or wherever you guys are fishing at with clear water. Just because when you're fishing, you know, that clear water and you're fishing like a soft bait, most of the time you're throwing it, you know, pretty slow and it's deep. And so when you're fishing it slow, those big fish will come up to the bait and they'll kind of look at it. They'll make sure that it's like legit, that there's nothing like too funky or weird about it, and then they'll eat it. So with that fluorocarbon, obviously it makes your line invisible. It's as well, it keeps your bait down there, where with copoly or with mono, the line doesn't sink. So you might make the cast out, and 50 feet, your bait might start coming up. Where with the fluorocarbon, you might get 80 feet by the time it starts coming up, just because that fluorocarbon does sink, and it keeps your bait down there in the strike zone a lot longer than it does with mono. So that's the setup that I've got for the soft baits. All right, and then the last bait, it's a soft bait. It's kind of new to me just because I've had some struggles with it in the past, but I've seen plenty of dudes catch really big fish on it in like the past few seasons. It's a staple in the game as well, and that's of course the Working Class Zero. It's the Battle Shad. I love this little bait. It's a perfect shad imitating style bait. So again, I'm gonna be throwing this bait when I know that they're keying in on shad. It's gonna be the same thing. If I know that there's a spawning flat and I know that there's big females that spawn up there, this is gonna be the bait that I'm gonna be throwing around outside instead of the trout pattern. The Battle Shad, it's weedless, so I could throw it anywhere and not have to worry about me snagging either rocks or grass or whatever else is down there, just because it's a weedless bait. It's run on a weighted beast hook. I believe it's a 10-aught. So it's weedless, it goes through any cover, and it's such a perfect bait, you know, this time of year, just because you could fish it anywhere. So if the fish happen to be in grass, you can go fish it in grass. Oh, you know, they switched up because the sun came up, they're in the rocks now, let's go fish. So you don't have to keep switching out baits. This bait is so versatile. You could throw it anywhere. You could skip it under docks. You could fish it in grass, rocks, cables. You could fish it anywhere, and this bait's gonna come back to you. Everything Mike Gilbert has done to this bait is absolutely incredible. I've gotten a couple bass on it, even at the urban spots on it. So this is one of those baits where, again, if I know there's shad in the area and those fish are hanging a little bit deeper, this is gonna be the bait that I'm gonna be throwing down there for. Same exact setup that I'm throwing. It's that Calcutta Conquest 400 20-pound Sunline FC Sniper fluorocarbon, and then that Production Lowdown Customs extra heavy rod. That's gonna be the setup for the Battle Shad as well. And those are gonna be the 5 baits I throw that I have tied on, you know, during the springtime. Sometimes I might have a few other, you know, baits like a punker, or, you know, I have that Clash Ghost now, but what I've had success in the past with is gonna be those baits that I showed you guys here today. So it's all about getting confidence in certain style of baits, because I know a lot of dudes like to throw, you know, bluegill style baits this time of year. I don't really throw bluegill baits this time of year. I throw those more in summer and fall, while I'd rather focus on still those trout eaters that are still around. That's when I throw those big style swim baits. But summer and fall, it's gonna be a little bit different story. We're gonna downsize a lot. We're gonna be throwing completely different styles of swim baits, but this is what I've got during the springtime. And if you guys have some springtime swim baits that I didn't mention in this video, leave a comment down below. I might have to check out a few of them, just because I have a lot of baits, but I honestly don't have enough, so I can always use some more. So leave a comment down below what you guys think, what you guys know of, and that's gonna be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, go out there and chase your dreams.